Hello, Steve White, Trek Boy 89 for Steve Arts 89. Well, we're down to our third last episode of Lower Decks. And yeah, this episode was called Upper Deck because just like in the final season of Next Generation, who did an episode called Lower Decks, where they basically looked at a day in the life of some of the less senior officers on the Enterprise, who were treated a lot better than the ones in Lower Decks because they don't get Star Trek on Lower Decks. But yeah, they felt the need to do this in their last season. So it's kind of interesting because we get to see the command crew, which we do see in episodes, but usually, you know, they're secondary characters, secondary stories. But the events often, you know, revolve around them, and the missions, you know, are commanded by them. So it's not like we've never seen them before, whereas the characters in Lower Decks on Star Trek Next Generation we'd never really seen before. So it was a different sort of thing. So we have a bunch of random stories that they're going through. There's Shax is trying to deal with his trauma from the Cardassian what do they call it? War. And he's like meditating and trying to manage his selves. It's just sort of weird. And what else we have? Oh, we have the space cows in the shuttle bay with Ransom managing that, and dealing with these aliens, and I've forgotten their name. I wrote it down and I can't see it because, damn it, I can't read my own handwriting. But yeah, so he's trying to manage that. Now that turns out to be because there's other aliens they're dealing with called the Clickets. They're like an insect race. And one of them has disguised himself as one of these other aliens who was in a couple of episodes of Deep Space Nine. I think it was one of the two-parters early on in season 2, I think. And they end up having to fight them, and you know, it's like it's not an exciting episode. None of these episodes have been. Now the good thing is they were all their own little stories. So we've had 8 stories, you know, for this season, whereas normally we just have one story and you just have chapters, and you don't notice how bad they are because they're just part of a story. So you kind of are just building up to something, and the purpose of it is just to build up and move on to the next thing. Whereas these episodes, once these writers get their own stories, you realise how bad they are at actually telling stories because they're just not really interesting or compelling. But at least they are their own little stories, so they've got some value as you can just watch them on their own. So there's that. But yeah, so we've just got a bunch of scenarios, like I said. We've got a de-evolved crew member whose name, Ensign Barnes, I was going to say. Didn't I write that down? Ensign Barnes, who is doing like a musical number with like what looks like a trombone or something like that. I'm trying not to tune out at points during the episode. Captain Freeman has to deal with that. They also have like a one-man show, which just forget about the next phase references and all that. So there's just not really interesting things that they're dealing with, and part of me wonders, were they trying to make them look less interesting and make their characters' stories not as interesting as, you know, our Lower Decks, you know, the stars of the show, as they said earlier, or are they just really this bad at telling stories? Because this was really boring. Now, the cat lady doctor was criticised for not using enough pain meds, so then she was like testing a whole bunch of things for how painful they were or something, and that was just weird. So she goes through that all through the episode and then turns around and is like, yes, like, she has to like reassess that, so I'm like, okay. Interesting. What else? Oh, Ransom sleeps through like this conflict. Like he's supposed to be all about trying to help his, you know, cadets and his junior officers and the officers below him, and he wants to sort of be all about that, but then he just pays no attention, is totally unaware of, you know, their lives being at stake. So that, I don't know, it's just, what else happened? Well, yeah, one of the ways they got rid of the Clickets was they complimented them because they hate compliments, so that was Freeman's way of basically telling them to go, which they did. And that's about it. I can't think of anything else that happened in this episode that's really interesting. I mean, Shax agrees to get therapy. And yeah, that's about it. The weirdest thing someone pointed this out as well, and I'm like, yeah, obviously this season was delayed because at the start of this episode they're carving pumpkins, so clearly it was meant to come out, the week of Halloween, so like a couple of weeks ago. So they must have been delayed a couple of weeks, and that's about it. So yeah, it was just, this season has really been really sort of weak, because even though it's good in a way because it's doing single episodes and you get sort of the adventure of the week, ship of the week, alien of the week, whatever, but none of these stories are particularly interesting. So it just shows how weak the people are, writing these, when they don't have some sort of overall structure to build up to, which really just get like one good episode at the end, and then the whole season is just building up and backing up that story. So I guess if you've done that for 4 years, it could sort of explain why your skills are a bit rusty or lazy, or maybe they was never that good in the first place. I don't know. I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe, and let me know what you think of the final season of this show, and looking forward to the last 2 episodes.